Okay, let's start. Welcome to our orcharhino webinar. Today's topic is general overview and new features. My name is Fabrice Brimioulle. I'm IT consultant at ADEX. In normal day work, I work mainly with orcharhino and with Puppet. And today I will present to you our webinar. So in the next 15 minutes, I want to talk first about ourselves. So what do we do at ADEX? What is our goal? And then I would continue with a live demo. If there are any questions, you can write in the chat. In the chat, there's my colleague, Martin Grundei.
Greetings.
So if you have questions, just type it in there. He will try to answer them in between. And during the break and at the end of the webinar, I will also have a look, and then you can ask us the questions. And then I can show you more things if you're interested in. So first of all, who are we at ADEX and what is our goal? So our main goal is to make life easier in data centers. So basically this means automation. Central to that, of course, orcharhino to administrate servers and virtual machines. But we do not only do virtual machines, we also do container infrastructures, for example, Apache Kafka, SUSE CaaS platform, Docker. We support also the use of configuration management tools as a general. But as I said, the main part is orcharhino for deployment and for configuring and administrating virtual servers in general. So the first question now is, why do we need to automate it all? So basically, automation increases the speed of deployments, leads to more stability, and achieves reproducibility. So if every one of you know, if you have to deploy a new server by hand, if you have to do it several times, you always type the same commands, it's repetitive, you do it all over again. So this takes quite some time. Sometimes you make tiny mistakes because you always do the same task. Sometimes you have a typo, something like that. So doing that automized increases stability. And also if you have to redeploy a server in the same state and deploy several servers which have to be identical, you can just rerun your building pipeline which you have defined and automate everything, and then everything gets identical and you don't have to do everything. Also, you can use it then to orchestrate your services. You can define your services and they are rolled out automatically on all your servers and you don't have to do anything. Last but not least, it enables administrators to do a self-service. So if you have to order a new server in a different department and open a ticket, it can take several hours, maybe days, until the server has been built and is available for you. With orcharhino, you can do it all yourself. And in best case, you just do 3 clicks and your server is going to be deployed and will be there in a few minutes. And it saves you a lot of time. So in ADEX, we have several departments. So we have a consulting department, which basically cares about orcharhino. So when a customer orders orcharhino, we do not only go there and install it for him, we also consult him, figure out what are the best features which are usable for him, how can he make best use of orcharhino and all that stuff. We have an engineering department which basically develops new orcharhino versions. So we deploy new versions, we test them, we also develop new features and also listen to requests which come from our customers if we need special plugins which are not available yet. We have a support department, so as an enterprise solution, we offer support for that. So the basic support would be that a customer, when a problem occurs, can open a ticket. Our support has a look in it and then fixes it for the customer. We also have slightly more sophisticated support models. For example, we can also take over and run orcharhino, or also just support the customers in running it. We offer trainings. So everybody who orders orcharhino can order training, and then the consultant will come there and train the administrators how to run orcharhino to get the best use of it. And in general, we support several operating systems. So basically all Linux enterprise operating systems. So this would be Red Hat and SUSE, and as well as Oracle. But we also support CentOS as derivative of Red Hat, Debian and Ubuntu, and also deployment of Windows. So the basic idea of orcharhino is to map the life cycle of the server. So this starts with the deployment. When we get over to the configuration management, we configure everything as we need it, and in the end, the release management. Starting about the deployment, there are several ways to deploy a server. The first one is the image-based deployment. This is the only way how to deploy a server in the cloud. So basically, this means we have a VM template. This template is being cloned. And when the clone comes online, we connect to it either via user data. This means we just configure it via Cloud Init, or via Finish template. This means we connect via SSH and we run just the basic configuration. In the end, you get a new host with OS and base configuration. The other way would be a fresh install of the operating system. For that, there are two methods. If we have the DHCP, we can do a network-based deployment. Then it will just do a PXE boot and then pull provisioning templates. In case of Red Hat operating system, it's a kickstart file. In case of Debian Ubuntu, it's a preseed. In case of SUSE, it's an auto-yast. Then all the commands are being executed. And in the end, we get again our server, which is fully configured and has a base OS installed. If we don't have a DHCP, we can provide a so-called boot disk. So this is an ISO file, which will be attached to our server. The server will boot from it, and from there it gets all the network information and comes online. And from this part, again, the provisioning templates are executed and our server gets deployed. Then there is a fourth way to deploy a machine, which basically is for bare metal servers. So this is the so-called discovery plugin. So if we use that, if a server now comes online in a network, which is administered by the discovery plugin, it will just show up in orcharhino as a discovered host. So this means if we have 10 bare metal servers to deploy, we don't have to go to data centers, which on one server, go back and deploy that and doing that 10 times in a row. We just can go to the data center. We can just switch on all the 10 servers at once. We go back to orcharhino, and then all the 10 servers will appear at discovered hosts. And from there, we can just assign all the operating systems and all the parameters we want them to be deployed with. We support several hypervisors and cloud supporters for deployment. For virtual machines, we support, for example, VMware, OVERT, Proxmox, and KVM. In the cloud, we support the Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Platform, and Microsoft Azure. The next step in the life of a server would now be the release management. In order to do that, we provide the local repositories on orcharhino. This means we create a repo on orcharhino and we synchronize the upstream repository just there. So we can attach all the repositories to our servers directly from orcharhino and don't have to go to upstream. So for that, additionally to that, we offer security errata. For those of you who are not familiar with the concept of an erratum, it's basically like a prescription. It tells you if a package is affected by a bug fix, by enhancement, or a security issue. It tells you what version is affected and to what version the package needs to be updated to close the issue. Originally, errata were only available for enterprise systems. So this means Red Hat and SLES. We also offer them for our customers in case of CentOS. The world of Debian Ubuntu originally didn't even know the concept of an erratum. So we started to parse all the update repositories for Debian Ubuntu and created and generated errata this way. In this way, we are also able to provide errata for Debian Ubuntu. So we were talking about reproducibility. Sorry. So to do that, if we want to deploy a server from in a week from now, and we would like to have it identically like it has been today, we are able to create so-called frozen repositories. So this is called a content view. So we just publish a content view. We create a content view, we assign repositories, and we publish a new version. And in this content view version, the packages will be frozen to the state it has been published today. So this means if I connect now this content view to a server in a week, in a month, or in a year from now, the server will obtain the packages as they have been provided today. This is also important considering lifecycle management. So many companies have different life cycles. For example, the easiest one would be development, testing, and production. So the most recent package state would be in development. So if now the developers have decided the packages are ready for testing, we can create a so-called lifecycle environment and assign it to a content view. Then we take this content view, which has been assigned to development, and we can promote it to testing. Once this has happened, all the test servers will obtain the repositories as if they have been attached to development before. In this way, we can avoid dependency errors, which might occur if only a part of the packages will be assigned to our servers. The same thing we can do when we assign the same packages then to the production servers when we have decided that they have been tested. The packages are stable, they can be used for production servers. So in this way, we can just run orcharhino in different environments and just assign the life cycles we require and promote them without getting any dependency errors once we have tested them. The next step, when we do the configuration, the first step there would be the templates during host creation. I already told you about that. So these are the commands which are being executed when a host gets deployed. The next step would be running the configuration management tools. In orcharhino, we support 3 tools. We support Ansible, Puppet, and SaltStack. These 3 tools follow slightly different philosophies. Ansible follows the philosophy of a fire and forget, basically. So this means that the configuration is pushed from one server, in our case, generally the orcharhino, to all the servers by SSH, and then normally never again, unless we define a cron job, which would just repush the configuration over and over again to create sort of a service. Puppet does provide this out of the box. Puppet is completely different from the idea. It is a server client system. So we have a Puppet master where the Puppet service runs, where we place all the configurations that have to be rolled out on our clients. On our client, there is an agent running in periodical periods. And so in general, it's every half an hour. The agent then asks the master about the configuration. If the configuration is fine, it just does nothing because everything is fine. If it is different, it will be corrected so that the configuration on the client matches the one which is defined on the master. SaltStack, in this case, is sort of a hybrid. You can run it as same as Ansible and push the configuration via SSH, or you can run it as a client server system as Puppet. In general, orcharhino is the master in both cases, but it's not necessary. You can also use an external master and just tell orcharhino that there's an external master and redirect the repository, the reports which are provided by the tools to orcharhino so that they can be monitored centrally. With this configuration management tools, we can also configure an OpenSCAP run. So OpenSCAP is not directly configuration, but OpenSCAP reports do the following. We can define certain policies and to look up if everything is well defined. If the server we are running is following certain rules we have defined in these policies, and it throws a warning when OpenSCAP discovers that the server is incompliant. The last step we have here from configuration are job templates, which can be run either via SSH or Ansible. So if we have to run several scripts or several commands several times on many servers, we can just define the script in orcharhino. This is then a so-called job template, and we can just roll it out on one server or on many servers just as we need it. So in the end, I want to tell a bit about the origins of orcharhino. So orcharhino is based on an open source project called Performant. Performant itself is for deployment and configuration management. The content management, so this means repositories, content view, and everything, which means that we assign packages to our servers, is done by the so-called catalog plugin, which itself consists of Pulp and Candlepin. As I said, we support many plugins for configuration management, Ansible, SaltStack, and Puppet. As I said, we have an engineering department which does the quality assurance, develops new version, new plugins. Another example for a plugin is the SCC Manager plugin for the SUSE customer portal, where we can place our credentials if we have a SUSE account. We also developed the plugin management, the snapshot management plugin, so we can snapshot virtual machines from Orcharhino if we are using VMware or Proxmox as a hypervisor. As I said, we provide the errata for CentOS, Ubuntu, and Debian, where we also developed the errata parser for Debian and Ubuntu. We provide as well the templates and the clients which are necessary to install a machine and to register the machine to Orcharhino, so that the template, repositories and subscriptions are correctly assigned. We have a support which takes care if there's a problem and fix it for the customer, but also supports in general administering if it's desired. We have a consulting department from which also the training is built. So in general, if there's a training, the consultant creates a training and trains all the people who are interested in the training. And if you want to install Orcharhino, it's always good to have a consultant, because consultants have much more insight in the many plugins which are available for foremen in general. And we can tell you which plugins work best together and fulfill the best purpose which you require. So all of this defines the product Orcharhino, which we are providing. We also have a web page where you can have a look at the manual of Orcharhino and have a look what we offer and what's available. We also offer this manual for every Orcharhino version directly. So if you're interested to see what's possible in there, you can have a look at this web page here and see what we provide. At this point, I am at the end of the presentation of ourselves and would continue with the live demo unless there are already a few questions. So let's see. Yeah, I can show you in the live demo how we switch servers from one environment to the other. So I will have now to change the chair so that you can see our Orcharhino. Okay, so basically you see now here this the page where we have all our servers in Orcharhino. You see we provide many operating systems. You see we have CentOS 7, CentOS 8, Debian 9 and 10. We have Oracle Linux, we have Ubuntu, we have Red Hat, we have SUSE, and we also have Windows servers deployed. Let me start with the following easy step. So I promised you it's quite easy to deploy a server in Orcharhino. So if we have predefined our parameters, we can just do it with 3 clicks. For that, we get here to create host. Now we have a host name. We can define a name. Let's call it webinar Ubuntu 20. We assign the host group. I will show you afterwards what all this means, all the predefinitions. So Ubuntu 20. And we click on submit. And the host is being built, and now it's on the run. So you see, it was quite easy. And now I will go to a bit more details. Let's start to go through all the tags we have here in general. So here you see where ATEX is written. This is the organization. Demo is the location. So you can start to divide your servers in different organizations, locations. Organizations means if you have several departments, which all has its own servers, and one department should not be able to mess with servers of the other department, you can just put them in different organizations. The same thing is with location, for example. If you have different data centers and you would like to cluster them in a way, you can just assign every server in one data center, one location, and then to the other one. And if you want to see the ones, you can just click here and change the ones you want to have a look at. If we click here at Orcharhino, we end up with a dashboard. So in the dashboard, we have a general overview over all our servers. This you can define the way you like. So this is different for every different customer because this is completely configurable. So we see a host collection. We don't have any on our demo orcharhino. We see subscription status for several servers. We see the sync status of the latest repositories that are synchronized. Our content views, latest errata, which became available for our servers. We see compliance reports for our servers. We see warnings which showed up recently, and much more. Next step would be here in monitoring. So if we click here monitor, the first I already showed you, it's the dashboard. Here we have the facts. So we have an overview over all facts of all servers which are available to Orcharhino. The same for statistics, trends, audits, and jobs. So if we click here on jobs, we can see all the jobs which have been visibly run on our servers which are on Orcharhino. Here we have an overview over all recent reports for our servers, but we also can have a look at them individually for every server independently. So we see here, we have here a puppet report, we have here a sort stack report. And if we go back a bit further, we should be able to see and to find an Ansible report. Okay, apparently we haven't done it in an Ansible run. I also will show you a different server then. Here we can have a look at all the tasks which we're running. So we see at the moment everything is fine. Orcharhino is not busy, nothing is running, nothing is stopped. And we can define recurring logics for several tasks which have to be run again and again and not only once. The next step here then is the content. In content, here we have an overview of our subscriptions. In this place, we also can manage our Red Hat manifest if we have a Red Hat account. We will just go here to manage manifest. We can upload it and refresh it, and then we would get the subscription of all our Red Hat servers, which can be seen here. So once we have done that, we see now here all the Red Hat repositories which are available. And here on the right, we see the ones which we have enabled and chosen in our case. As I said, we also have now a plugin for the SUSE subscriptions. So if we have a SUSE account, we can just create this entry. You get in there, you define your credentials, the name, credentials, and they can synchronize it. Once it's synchronized, you can just click on select products. You check one product you would like to have. So let's just take the enhanced systems management module. You click on submit. And then the product will be created in the meantime. All the products, all the repositories are created in products. So you can see here all the products we have for our operating system. Wait a second. So right here you see this is the product we just created from the user subscription manager. We have the products for CentOS, for Debian, for we have Apple for EL7 and EL8, Puppet, and so on. So we created all the different repositories. We can have a look at one. Let's have a look at CentOS. So we look at the operating system. So the OS repository. Here we have URL from which is synchronized. We define the architecture, the metadata which is to be used, and then everything can be synchronized quite easily. I can show you now as well, I think in the new repository you just created. Let's go back in the tabs. Wait a second. We get in our module. We just check one. We click on sync now. And now it's being synchronized. So next, here are the credentials. So if we have DPG keys or certificates we want to use for repositories, we can define them here and assign them afterwards in the repository. Here we have sync plans. So for example, if you want to synchronize repositories once every day or every night, once a week, or as a cron line, we can define our sync plan in here. So you'll see we have here several dual sync lines which run during the night. Wait a second. So we have now it's a bit busy because of the synchronizing. Right, there it is. So we have one here running at midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and so on. And if we look here at the products again, we will see the sync line which has been assigned to the product. So we will see now from CentOS 7, it synchronizes every night at 3 a.m. Here you see it. In the sync status, we have an overview over all repositories which are available on orcharhino. I will open that in a tab and give it some time to refresh the status. In the meantime, we will have a look at the content views, which are below the life cycles. I will go to the content views first because this is the next logical step after having repositories. So we see now here different content views. We will have a look at the content view CentOS 7, for example. In YAM content repositories, we see now here that these repositories have been assigned. So it has been, they have been successfully synced tonight. If I now want to publish a new version, to get a new frozen state, I will just go in here and go to publish new version and go to save. Now the new version will be published and will be available to the servers in the concerning lifecycle when it has been assigned. Now we have our page with the sync status. We can expand all. Now we see here we have all our repositories. We see we have been synchronized. We can just click on active only, and we see now this is the / repository we enabled, and we are syncing at the moment. It has 9 packages and it's working right now. The thing is, we recommend to create a content view for every single product. This way we can administer them independently from each other. For example, if you want to apply a new Puppet version, but you don't want to update the operating system, it would be good to have different content views because you can just publish a new Puppet content view, but leave the CentOS content view the same, for example, with the CentOS. The thing is we only can assign one content view to our service. Therefore, we have so-called composite content views, and these are being assigned to service. And they consist of separate single content views. And these composite content views then we can assign to so-called life cycles. So let's have now a look to our lifecycle environment path. So we see on our demo orcharhino, the basic lifecycle is library. So everything which is published will end up in library first. When promoting, it will be promoted in our case to development, testing, and production. Now, if I publish a new version of a composite content view, let's go in here. Let's see if this version has been published. It's still working. Unfortunately, this one already has been published to the latest environment, so this is not ideal for demonstration. So let's have a look at the different content view, which is a bit more outdated. Let's have a look on /15 SP2. Yeah, this one is fine. So if we have now published new versions of everything, now of our content views, we can publish a new version of our composite content view, and it would be a library and would have been promoted to development. So now in this case, the version 4.0 of our composite /50 SP2 is assigned to library and development. So a development server would get the version 4, and a testing server version 3, and a production to version 2. If I want now to assign the version 4 to a test server, I just click here on promote. I click on testing and I promote the version. And once the promotion is done, this version will be completely assigned to test server. So in this way, the test server gets a new content version is updated. The other way would be you can also try to shift the server to a different environment. For example, if you are running them for every month a new version, you can just shift the server itself, which I can show a bit later. So you see this one is being promoted, will be done in seconds, and now this version is also available for test servers. So here we have the activation keys. Activation key tells our server what subscriptions are assigned to it. So here we define what repositories will be available for our server. So we have a key Center7 test, which is for Center7's test servers. And we see here servers which are subscribed with this key obtain Center7, the Center client, Repo, Puppet, and source state as repositories. Now here, for a general overview over all packages which are available in Orcharhino, we have the DEP packages, we have file resources, we have packages in general, all the errata, module streams which only are important for PL8, and Puppet modules. Next stop now we have here are our hosts. If I click on all hosts, we end up at the first tab we have been before. We will just close the other ones we already had. You see we have our general overview again. Here, discovered hosts. Here, that's the place where the host discovered by the discovery plugin would show up. Create host, I already showed you, it's the same like before. We can create a host from that. The content host is where we can assign all the subscriptions to our server after they have been released already. We can cluster them also in host collections. We have an overview of our architectures, hardware models. Here we have installation media, which we provide for all our servers. This can be upstream. This can be also locally stored in the pub of Orcharhino. Here we have an overview of all the operating systems which are provided by Orcharhino at the moment. So you see again, we have all the different Linuxes and different versions of Windows. Here we can place all the partition tables which are required when we want to deploy a server. The same here we have the provisioning templates which are available. So as I said, these are the commands which are executed when we are installing a server. Here in the job templates, that's what I meant before. Here we can define several scripts and then just run the scripts on our servers over and over again. This part here, compliance, is part of the SCAP, as I mentioned before. Here we can place our policies, the SCAP contents, and here we have an overview of the SCAP reports, which we got back. In configure now, we get to the host groups. This is the point I already promised you before to show you. Here, all the parameters when deploying a host are defined. So before we published or we deployed in the Ubuntu 20. So let's have a look at Ubuntu 20. So the first is the name of our host group. We can derive host group from parent host groups, just telling which one it should be. We assign the lifecycle environment in which the server is supposed to live. We assign the content view, the content source, which is the Orcharhino or the Orcharhino proxy in networks where Orcharhino does not have access but has an Orcharhino proxy which does it for it. The Puppet environment, here we can define our deploy source. This can, in our case, we can deploy on VMware or on Proxmox. If we leave it open, we could deploy by metal machines. The compute profile is like a t-shirt size. We can define in the standard for memory, for disk space, and for the CPU power, which is supposed to be. We define our Puppet master, the Puppet CA, the OpenSCAP proxy, the sort environment, and the sort master. So these are the first basic steps. At this place here, we can define the sort states, which are supposed to be rolled out by the server. We can assign Ansible roles over here. Here we assign Puppet classes, which are supposed to be run. Here we set the network for the server, so the domain, and the subnet, and in case you have an IPv6 subnet, this as well. The operating system, we define the architecture of the operating system. We define the medium in this place. So you see in this case, we have three media. The medium which is located on the Orcharhino itself, one is proxy, or in case you want to deploy it from upstream. We have now here the partition table which is assigned, and the Pixie loader. Now we have the different parameters we can assign. So in this case, you see we set certain Puppet parameters. Here we define the location, the organization, and we assign the activation key, which with the server is supposed to register itself to Orcharhino. The next would be here infrastructure. In the smart proxies, you can see all the smart proxies which are running. The one is the Orcharhino itself. The other one is a proxy, which is a different network where Orcharhino does not have access to, but there is a proxy which does all the tasks which are required for it. We have our compute resource. Here we define where we want to deploy. So here we define our VMware, for example. If we click edit, we see how it's configured. We set the credentials, we can test the connection, and everything works fine. Similarly, we can assign, for example, here Proxmox, but these are not the only hardware support, as I already told you. So here we can define the two configurations for people who are running Red Hat and we are using the two configuration to define the subscriptions. Here we can define our compute profiles, the so-called t-shirt size, as I said, we have a small, a medium, and a large. So here we can set where it's supposed to deploy, we can define the memory, the hard disk, and the network interface. But we can also override all these parameters when deploying a new host before we submit it. Here we define the subnets. So you see we have two different subnets. This is the one for the Orcharhino. This is the one which is run by our Orcharhino proxy. Here we define the domains that are available. Here we can set all the different HTTP proxies, and here we can configure our realms. So in administrator now we have a general overview. Here we can configure which locations, organizations we want to use. We can assign the authentication sources, which might be an AD or an LDAP server. Here we can then define our users and user groups and assign roles, which limit the tasks which a user is supposed or allowed to run on Orcharhino. We have now here all our word execution features in general. Here we can define all the different settings which are set to Orcharhino. So these are many settings just to show overview, see how configurable Orcharhino is. Here you have the link to the documentation, which is bound to the version. We are just this Orcharhino just is at the moment. In the about, you can just see now the plugins which are installed, and you can also see the backend status for all our backends. So you see the providers, you see the assigned resources, you see the installed plugins, and you see the package versions that are installed, and here you have an overview of the backend status. I think this look a few parts in configure, right? So we have discovery rules in configure as well, which we can set. We can set also global parameters. So we can set parameters many different levels. We can set it globally, we can set it to the host group, we can set them to the host individually, or also in the subnet or for an operating system. We can define several Puppet environments in here. Here we have our different Puppet classes. The same for Ansible. We have Ansible roles, Ansible variables. So we can override variables from the standard. The same applies to source stack. And one new feature that we have now, which is a tech preview and will be generally available quite soon, is the application-side deployment. So for example, if you want to deploy a Kubernetes cluster or a LAMP stack, you can just define the playbook in here. You give it a name, you describe it, you give a path to the Ansible playbook, which is supposed to roll out the configuration. Once you have done that, you can get to your app definitions and define them. So let's look at Kubernetes. So we see we have for Kubernetes a master and we have a worker. Then we can now configure the minimum count of master workers, which is one for the master and one to four for the workers. And in the end, we can define our instance itself. So we have here, for example, our demo Kubernetes, which is then one master and two workers. And if you want to roll out this cluster, it's quite simple. You can just go here, you click on deploy, and now the servers will be on the run. Let's wait a few seconds until it shows up here. You can also have a look now at the general overview, because then the servers should show up over here. So we see The master already is being built. Worker 1 is being built, and worker 2 is just in the queue and is in the build now. So now let's have a look at the server we deployed before. So that was our webinar Ubuntu. So we have now a general overview over all the parameters we can configure with that. So the first thing you will notice probably is that our server is in the error status. So why is that? The status here is a summary of all the statuses which are below over here. So we already see here, the reason for the error status is that there are security errata available for this server. So once we close all the issues, it will be green again, everything will be fine. So let's go to different parameters over here. So your build status installed, configuration is active. This means that the last configuration manager run was successful and it had changes. The last remote execution which was triggered was also successful. We see our sort mask, the sort environment, the system purpose, which is not specified. We see the subscription is fully entitled. We see the domain, we see the MAC address. Over here, we see different values for the metrics. We see the templates which has been used for deployment and can render them to see what commands have been executed. Now we have information about the virtual machine itself, about the network interfaces. And here we have our snapshot plugin. So for example, if we want to make a snapshot for this for the server, we just can type in test snapshot, description, whatever. Now we can decide if we want to include RAM or not. Let's do it without RAM because then it's a bit quicker for demonstration. We click on create. And now if we go here, we see that a snapshot has been created. If we now want to roll back, we will just click on roll back and click on OK. We don't want to do that because then the server will be switched off because we did snapshot without RAM. And in case we no longer need the snapshot, we can just go over here and delete it. So let's go now next to the content management. So if we now click here on content, we can see subscription status of our host. We see it's connected to the community Ubuntu, and it's a testing server. In subscriptions, we also can see what repositories have been assigned. So we can assign several new repositories which are in the content view to make it available to the server. And over here, it's a provisioning template status. And here we can manually shift if we want to shift one server, for example, from development to testing. So we want to tell no, this server no longer is a development server. It's supposed to be testing server now. We can just change it here by clicking on testing. In this case, we want just promote it to be a production server. We save it. In this way, we can move a server instead of promoting an environment in case we want to do it that way. So now we have here our subscriptions, and here we can have also a look at the repositories which are now available for our server. If we want now to update a package, we can have a look now here at their packages. We look at installed. We can now see these are all the packages which are available or which are installed on the server. Now, if we want to install a new package, we can go to App Actions. Let's, for example, install Vim. We click Vim. We click on Perform. Now a remote execution is triggered. So via SSH, orcharhino connects to the server and runs an apt-get update. So you see, app is running. Processed, and the package has been installed. And we see has been a success. It's over there. And if we get back here, we go to our available packages. We have a look, we look for Vim, and we see here the new version is there. So we have seen this server was in error status because we had open errata. So if we click here on errata, we can see what security issues are open. So we see we have plenty of them. The server has been prepared to be not up to date. So we can demonstrate how to close such an issue. So we have several vulnerabilities concerning the Linux kernel. We don't want to fix that here, but let's just close this errata. For the tar vulnerability, we click on this. We actually click on apply selected. Then again, via remote execution, an apt will be triggered. The corresponding package will be updated. So let's wait a second. It has been done. This has been successful. We go back in history. And we see the errata no longer is listed, has been closed. So let's go back to the general overview of our server directly. So we have been here. In case we want to run any remote execution, we can just click here, for example, remote execution. We can run ad hoc commandos. So for example, we do an uptime. It's been run. Clicking on the server name. Now the zoom bar went in the way. Okay. And you see we got back response. We can run many different sorts of commands. We can run Ansible commands. We can run Ansible playbooks, which have been assigned. We can run Puppet triggered by Ansible. We can run Puppet triggered by remote execution, and much more. If we want to run a config management tool once, for example, we can go here and we can tell it to run all the Ansible roles once. So we see this is still going to be run. Here we see that the template, which is being executed. And if we click on the server name, we see what we expect from Ansible, what it looks like, and the Ansible role is being executed. Now let's have a look at the other server we already prepared to show you a bit more, which we have run. There we have assigned Puppet state, Puppet class, assault state, and an Ansible role, so you can see different reports. So let's have a look at the webinar rel 8. If you now click on report, you see all the configuration of the reports you got that. So you see you get regularly the Puppet reports, you get regularly the sorted reports. Ansible was fine to get and was just run about 10 minutes after the host has been deployed and came online. So now we can run as well the sort state. We click over here. We can now also, okay, you see the sort state is running now. That's what I wanted. Let's run it in the meanwhile. It can take up to 1 minute. So here we can download a boot disk in case we need a full image for boot disk deployment. If we get here, we get back to the same pattern we had before when we deployed the host. And here we can change the configuration. For example, now we can remove source states, assign new source states, Ansible roles, and just change the configuration of our server. In case we want to build an identical server with the complete same parameters, we can just click on clone. We assign our name, and then everything else would be configured identically to the server which serves as a template. So we see here now, sort that has gone through, everything was successful. Now let's have a look at the web page quite a bit. There it is. And this is the web page which has been rolled out now with SourceStack. So you see a nice orcharhino and ASCII and a nice welcome message. So basically, we are almost at the end. Here we have the power off, power on switch, so we can easily switch on and off servers which are connected. On the console, we can have a direct look on our server, on the VMware console, for example. And here in the end, we can delete the server. And last but not least, let me show you once, the so-called bulk jobs. As I said, we can run roles, remote execution, anything else on several servers simultaneously. So let's have a look at both our webinar servers. We click on select action. We go now to schedule remote job. And we can just run an uptime on both of them. We click on submit. So we see on both has been successful. And we get the uptime for both servers. So one has been up for 24 minutes and one for 2 minutes and 50 seconds. Basically, we are now at the end of our live demonstration. So if you have any questions, just type them in the chat. We'll try to answer them. And if you want to have something else shown, just write it. So let's have a look. Is there a possibility to do a mass switch of hosts from ConnectV 1 to ConnectV 2? Yes, it is possible. For that, you go to Content House. I have to think. We can change the. Let's take it. Okay, it wouldn't make sense to do that over here. We can change the environment over here. We can manage the subscriptions. Let's see. Okay, I have to look it up. It definitely works if you run an API call, because then you can just do that. I have to figure out if it can be done on the surface. This is something which is not done too often. Okay, here I can change the life cycle. I have to check. I can't tell you right now. If it cannot, in case it shouldn't be able to be done, it should be easy to get to do a feature request to enable that. But for the moment, I don't see it. Sorry. I have the request. Yeah, is it able? Is it able to manage repositories for old versions? My colleague already answered that, but I can show you. I can show you the subscriptions that are available for us, like products. It depends on your subscription. If you have a subscription for that, it should work. I can't tell now. Apparently, our subscription has changed. So you see it, right? You see, you even have here the possibility to subscribe as less 10. If there is a new repository added to a system, it can't be seen immediately. How long does it take to until it shows up? You mean you added it to a server in the surface, and you want to show it up, you have to, it can be that you need to refresh it. In case of Ubuntu, you have to do an update to refresh that. In case of Yum, you have to do probably you have to just refresh your subscription that it gets visible. Red Hat. If you do a Yum repo list, it should be there immediately. Once it is, what's important? If you want to assign a repository to a server, it needs to be in the content you assigned. You can assign repository to another recording view. So the problem technically can be done, but it will never show up in the server. How do we migrate a server environment from one Ocarina server to a completely different Ocarina server? This would be a following workflow. So, first, you have to unsubscribe your server from the old Ocarina. You have to delete the certificate of the old Ocarina. Then you have to download the new install the new certificate and subscribe to the new one. So it's quite simple. You just have to unsubscribe from one, remove the certificate, get the new certificate from the new Ocarina, and just subscribe it to this one. And then automatically it's attached to the new one. So migration from one Ocarina to the other is not a very complicated task. So are there more questions? So let's wait a minute if someone else has a question in the last moment. No, so everything seems to be fine. Then I would end the webinar for today. Thank you for your participation and have a nice day. Bye.